Are you like us? Tired of all the politically correct horseshit on podcasts and in the media? Need a podcast that's funny, smart, and gassy? It's not politically correct. It's just correct. This is the Carolina Underground. Throw that middle finger in the air. Raise them up. Because it's time to get loud, proud, and in your face. Generation X. Generation X. The best generation of all time meets the grit of the South. It's about everything and nothing at all. From current events to woolly boogers to movies to politics. Loud, brash, funny, and never, and I do mean never, predictable. The Carolina Underground with Mark and Mike.
Yo, 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 it's the Carolina Underground, and we're back again on this wonderful episode, coming to you live from the Replica Bat Cave and somewhere deep in the dark depths of the town of Sparkleberry.
How you doing this evening, sir?
Ooh, I'm going to tell you, the triple goat peckers are erect and they hitting straight.
I'm worried about you, my friend. That stuff seems to be warping your mind.
Ooh, I'm going to tell you one thing. You know what? I ain't even going to say it because I'm going to have to bring out the general if I say
It's going to be one of those nights, huh?
I didn't know we had any but those.
That's true. Well, I mean, again, that is one of the things, if you listen to our intro, we're supposed to be tackling things that press people's buttons and calling out truth to power and that kind of stuff, I reckon. I don't know. I mean, or at least being obnoxious. I guess we could tell some dad jokes. What do you call a fish with no eyes?
I don't know. What do you call a fish with no eyes?
A better
Lord
one
have
that's
mercy.
mostly southern is, what do you call a deer with no eyes?
I don't know. What do you call a deer with no eyes?
No idea.
Lord have mercy. Are you sure you ain't the one with the triple goat pecker coffee?
No, I'm not sure of anything at this particular point. Now, I'll tell you what I am sure of.
What's that?
I was watching. I canceled my Netflix account long while back when they had that whole bit where they had that. What was it? It was Hotties, where they were basically showing child pornography.
Oh, that like the child. Yeah, I remember
Yeah. And, I mean, again, that's kind of.
I had already canceled mine prior to that because they did a show with Michelle and Barack Obama.
Hey, gosh, I swear. I mean, again, okay. Well, I don't want to get too deep into that, but my girlfriend still had her account. We were watching a show on, and I can't recall the name of it.
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
No, that wasn't it. But
it's on there. It's one of the best ones on there.
Oh, I know. But this was about the blue zones. Now, are you familiar with what blue zones are?
Well, you brought that up earlier in our pre-show touch base, and evidently what I think blue zones
You're not
are.
supposed to tell the folks this. You broke the fourth wall, man. You're not supposed to tell them we talk about this stuff.
Well, let's get back in our time machine.
All right. Yep. So go ahead, sir.
Well, I was just saying what I thought they were is not what you were bringing up. So why don't you let everybody know what they are, and then we'll discuss it, because what I thought it was those like blue hole type things that they found
like
in the ocean and stuff.
No, that is not what they are. They are areas in where like Okinawa. There's one in Greece, I think it's called Ikaria.
Mm-hmm.
There's one in Costa Rica called Nicoya. And these are areas where people they regularly live to be 100 years old or more.
Hmm.
And they have almost, and again, it's not 100 years old, slurping oatmeal through a straw and can't remember your name. These people are vital.
So they're not
They're
like Joe
strong.
Biden.
Right. Exactly. And so this fella did. His claim to fame was he broke the Guinness World Record for riding his bicycle across nations. He rode his bicycle basically around the world. Okay,
I
and
call BS on that.
well, I mean, he did. He didn't ride it. I mean, of course, he didn't ride it across the Atlantic or the Pacific.
Well,
He
now
rode
I
the-
would now you see what you should have said was, and he had this special stand built when he got to the ocean where he put it on a ship and he kept pedaling while he was
kept pedaling.
riding on the boat.
Well, now that would be interesting. I wonder if you could. Yeah, that would be an interesting.
I mean, that would
thing.
technically,
Yeah,
that way you really
technically
would
be
ride
right,
all the way
right.
around the world.
That's an interesting thought. Maybe we should pursue that further.
And there's Goat
tracing
Pecker
that
number
through.
one.
Now, so back to the blue zones. At any rate, this fellow went through and he spent 20 years studying
Seems like
these blue
there's
zones.
one in Russia too, in Siberia somewhere.
There might be. I'd have to go back through and look.
Now that you mention it, there was I used to love all those British sitcoms, and one of them, Are You Being Served, takes place in a department store in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. And they end up talking about this small village in Russia to where they live ungodly ages and stay virile right up to the very end because they put yak butter in their tea.
Well, and that's kind of the thing that he was looking at to see what the commonalities are and what they do now. And again,
I'll bet you it's got something to do with Triple Goat Pecker coffee.
Well, actually, probably not. So basically, what the things that they all have in common is they're all remote areas.
Okay.
They all have very limited to no modern health care.
Imagine that.
Okay. And they stay active, and they don't. Their culture, their economy is not based on money and dollars and cents.
So essentially they're living
like we were
the pre-modern world, right?
Right. And so the interesting thing, one of the things that was mentioned is that in the 20 years that he has been doing this study, the blue zones have shrunk, I want to say, by 80%. And it's because of the encroachment of things like modern fast food and things of that nature. And so, but again, the primary things that seem to be commonalities is they all have a garden. Yep. They typically eat they have a diet that consists very similar to what the American Indians called the Three Sisters, which is corn, not high fructose corn syrup like we have in every bloody thing in the world in the United States, but they have corn. They have beans as their primary source of protein rather than an animal protein. Now, they do eat some animal protein, but not at the rate that we do in the United States. And squash.
I like squash. Notice how, though, our shows tend to revolve around the number 3.
Interesting.
Three Sisters, 3 Peckered Goat Coffee. Just saying.
Okay.
Coincidence?
Well,
I think not.
Well, we also do talk about the 3-in-1 quite frequently.
Yeah.
But anyway, but basically it is they almost everybody has a garden. They have very tight-knit communities because they share their resources together. Okay. So it's like instead of paying for ridiculous insurance, they all kind of pooled their money together in case something happens bad.
Truthfully though, like a modern day equivalent in the United States that somebody could probably wrap their mind around is when you started saying some of this, the first thing that popped in my mind was the Amish.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Very similar. Okay. But the Amish tend to have, they tend to be more, westernized with this work yourself to death. But again, one of the biggest things is the joy of life.
Mm-hmm.
So for one thing, these 100-year-old people have something that they have contributed to the community for for the vast majority of their life, and they continue to do it. They don't just stop when they hit a certain number on the calendar.
Right.
And so that was one of the things that was really funny. The guy down in Costa
Rica, and
Rica,
that's one thing though that you and I have touched on before is that, in our life experience, when people normally hit that retirement age and retire and they quit doing stuff, it's not long.
Oh yeah,
before they're gone.
Yeah, absolutely. But so so again, I think my personal opinion, I think there is a certain genetic component to it.
Well, there has to be. There has to be.
Yeah. But then the second part of the puzzle.
Well, and of course, too, the other thing you said, though, with not having modern medicine, they're not putting all that garbage into their bodies and being prescribed upteen gazillion drugs for stuff that you really shouldn't have anyway.
That's all across the board. Because think about it. Think about what we have here in our modern industrialized society. So we don't grow our own food. So what part of the growing of their own food is that they're constantly getting very gentle exercise, the way that the human body was meant to be exercised.
Well, and they're not having GMOs.
Right. They're not filling themselves up with chemicals. Now, again, the whole thing about a GMO is that is an organism that has been genetically modified so that it only grows in the presence of a specific pesticide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's the kind of crap that we are eating. Now, in addition to the whole thing about the GMOs, they can't allow them to ripen on the vine or on the stalk or whatever they ripen on. They got to pick them long before they're ripe and package them up and ship them out so that they ripen while they're being transported to the store that you're going to buy them out of. Well, what are they going to use to continue the ripening process except for the energy that they stored while they were on the vine? So they're going to consume nutrients and energy from within the food. So the food that you're getting has very little nutrition actually in it because the plant, the fruit required it in order to complete the ripening process.
Right.
So any rate, so and again, they are eating very traditional, very simple stuff. They're not overeating the
rice and gravy for breakfast, rice and gravy for lunch, and rice and gravy for dinner.
Well, rice and beans, but they also before they eat a meal, they always in the one in Okinawa, they always state a phrase, and I can't speak Okinawan, so I'm not going to attempt to butcher it here, but it basically translates to stop eating when you're 80% full. So they have no incidence of obesity. They have, and again, they're getting this constant exercise. They don't have, in Okinawa, they don't even have furniture in their houses. They just got these tatami mats. So they're constantly doing squats, getting up and sitting down and stuff like that. Now, the one
that hurts my butt bone just hearing that.
Well, but if the one in Costa Rica was funny because when he went down there, he goes to meet this guy, and the guy comes up and they're chatting back and forth and talking. And he said, they talk for a few minutes, and then the reporter says, well, I'm supposed to meet a centenarian here. And the guy says, well, that's me. Now, I'm here to tell you, the guy rode in on a freaking horse.
Oh, Lord.
Okay.
Like Will Rogers, he got it going on down there.
He was 102 years old at the time that they were talking to him. He looked like he was about 60.
Wow.
Okay. And this guy in the morning hops up. He gets out of bed about 4 or 5 a.m., climbs up on the back of his horse and goes out there and is herding cattle, roping calves, herding cattle around at 102 years old. And so the reporter didn't believe him. He showed him his ID, and he says, that's got to be a fake. And he went and looked the fellow up, and it absolutely was the guy. And I mean,
Wow.
the dude looked like
That's amazing.
He looked like he was in his 60s. Now, again, and his grandson, his daughter or granddaughter, or I don't know, she was young, so she was probably his granddaughter. It was probably his great grandson.
Mm-hmm.
Is his daughter's talking about, oh yeah, well, my son won't eat the traditional foods, and he's stuffing his face full of pretzels and potato chips and crap like that. And they were showing all of the encroachment of the fast food industry and stuff like that in all these places. It's really sad. I mean, so the moral of the story is we're killing ourselves by our adoption of this modern society, because again, you and I grew up when there were still remnants of the old South, where I know we've talked about it, where your grandparents, when they'd finish a meal, they'd clean up the kitchen and they'd go visit.
Right.
So they would either they'd go visit, and it all depend on basically on who finished eating dinner first,
right, or who went visiting last time, because it was like a circle.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is the whole, and I mean, again, they'd sit there and they talked about it, and they'd get together late at night and they would laugh and cut up and talk and have a great time till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and do it again. Now, the other thing was they didn't work, they worked their butts off for about 4 hours.
Yep.
And then the rest of the day, because and this was before it got hot, because every one of these places was in hot. The tropical zone, and it gets hot.
Well, and here too, though, that's the way it was here too, because it's
exactly
the heat in the South and the humidity.
Yep, you got up and you did your work, and you were knocking off by about 11 o'clock. And at 11 o'clock, from that point forward, you might go fishing. You might go do whatever you want to do. You might go wander around and look at the waterfalls or whatever. I mean, just something to relax your mind and enjoy the life. And I think that's in my heart. I feel like that is got to be a huge component of what makes these people's lives what it is.
Well, it has to be.
Yeah.
And not the constant stress and bombardment of all the social media, fake news outlets, and all these other stuff telling them that they're supposed to be feeling bad and everything else.
Or telling you that you've got more money in your wallet right now than you've ever had before, and the economy's doing great, and you're really not spending, 4 times as much for a carton of eggs as you were 3 years ago. Right. Well, anyway, sorry. I didn't mean to add stress.
Soapbox number 1.
Well, no, if I'm going to stack soapboxes, it's going to be about the Department of Justice or the Department of Injustice and whatnot like that, because this stuff is just absolutely, it has gone so far beyond absurd. I can barely even continue to watch it, but
I try not to.
Well, but that's kind of part of the problem, if you sit and think about it, in my opinion, because it's hard to watch, but I know I've mentioned it before when they interviewed the Holocaust survivors and they asked them, how did you let things go to the point where you were loaded up on cattle cars on a train and carted off to God knows where, starved to death, tortured, and murdered? And they all answered the same kind of thing. And it was, well, we just ignored it because we figured it would blow over. And we are well past a point where men need to be men and stand up. And this goes all the way down from, we just look at the federal government and all the massive amounts of corruption that those people are just doing in plain sight and covering their own tracks. You remember Porky's, that movie
I used
from
to
when
love
we were
that movie.
kids?
I love that movie.
Yeah. I mean, and that was the kind of movies we used to have there. That was not the only one in that genre.
Well, I mean, and that one was more of a racy one, but you had like The Great Outdoors, Uncle Buck,
right. Well,
um,
yeah, where you Walking Tall.
Walking, yeah,
Buford
all the
Puzzle.
John Candy movies and
Yep.
all of that stuff. I mean, they were just hilarious, and they were just like even like the Michael. I think it was Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner romancing the stone.
Well, no, but what I was talking about is the whole genre of discovering corruption and then having the intestinal fortitude to stand up against it.
Oh,
And
I
move
was
it
just
down and
talking
tear it
about
up.
good movies in general.
No, I mean, again, I'm talking about where is the pushback? Why have we not? And the pushback has to go all the way down to your local city council. I heard the other day where one of the counties in Greenville just they didn't have a guest speaker,
Mm-hmm.
and so they just canceled the meeting. They didn't let the people come in and talk about what they wanted. They didn't. The government at every level in the United States no longer works for the citizenry. They have created themselves as a privileged class now, and that's got to stop, because that was in de Tocqueville's Democracy in America,
Mm-hmm.
that as soon as you get a group of people that realize that they can vote for their own self-interests and enrich themselves, that this whole experiment will end. And that's where we are right now. I mean, you look at these and I don't understand why people have so much difficulty understanding that and believing that, because we have all these historical accounts of all of the depravity, and think about the Borgias and all of that stuff,
Oh,
all of the
Lord.
intrigue and all of the people, killing their enemies, poisoning them, going out there
and
assassinating
using the
them.
papal pear.
Yep. Absolutely.
Oh, my! I'm gonna tell you one thing though. There at one time they had fighting sitcoms of the Borgia on, and one was on Netflix and one was somewhere else. Them some dirty efforts.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, and that's how those people rise to power, and that's the whole thing that our founding fathers put together the three branches of government the way that they did, so that that you would have a chance for there to be a check and a balance, so that these people couldn't get together. Now they assumed that people would be paying enough attention to who they voted for and what the people they voted for did.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they also weren't supposed to be paid. They were supposed to be public servants. Okay. But you were supposed to be paying enough attention that you did not allow them to get in there with their cronies and their buddies and create this monstrosity abomination that we've got now. And again, I'm talking about the federal government, but this corruption extends down all the way to your local city council and your mayor.
Well, I mean, case in point, look at that mayor at that mayor that's constantly at odds now that they're investigating for spending all that money.
Oh yeah.
The black lady from is it Indiana?
Well, I don't know which one you're referring to, but all of them are pretty awful in my opinion, because they're not servants of the people anymore. And again, it was one of those in one of the counties in Spartanburg that I used to live in, or excuse me, one of the cities, townships, whatever you want to call it. It was somebody that I actually knew, and I can't remember exactly what she was doing, but she was embezzling just tons of money. And they finally caught her.
She's in Illinois. Tiffany Henyard.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I haven't paid attention to that one. I've just been watching the whole thing with Fonnie Willis, and they finally I think there was finally some movement on Fonnie Willis being, I mean, again, it's one of those things when the person who is, the DA who is prosecuting someone else for RICO violations is committing RICO violations, you kind of got a problem that you
Right.
need to unravel, in my rarely humble opinion.
Well, and
But,
we back in the Whores R Us trial too.
yeah.
You had Michael Cohen on the stand,
Mm.
and I had a hard time trying to figure out whether he was testifying for the defense or the prosecution. Because what I heard was he pretty much said that he pretty much did everything.
Well, and he did. And it's again, and the big problem I've got with that, the biggest problem I got with that, what is the crime that's being adjudicated?
Something that the state of New York has no jurisdiction over.
Well, they won't even tell you what that is.
It's supposedly election interference.
Right, some kind of election interference. Well, they're committing election interference with this trial, because all they're trying to do is put enough dirt in the media about Donald Trump. I know Donald Trump is no angel. I mean, there's no way that anybody can become a multi-billionaire in the United States without doing something crooked, or in the world, period. I'm sorry, you can't amass that kind of money, those kind of resources, without doing something crooked. I'm sorry, you just can't. Okay, in my opinion. So all of these multi-billionaires, they're crooked, in my opinion. All right. I mean, there may be one or two of them out there, but again, even Warren Buffett is guilty of doing double dealing, because he's one of the main ones that went in there pushing back against the oil pipelines, because the cut in the oil pipelines forces them to use rail traffic, the trains, to transport this stuff, because it would be cheaper to transport it through a pipeline, because you don't have an engine that you got to run. But nope, that's what the rail system is being used for, and any rate, all of that stuff. Now, again, the whole thing is the only thing that a government is really, really, really good at doing is siphoning money and resources off of the citizenry. So it's up to the citizenry,
like we said
to
before,
make sure that they're doing good stuff with that money that
if
we are
you
allowing
work
them to siphon
for the
off.
government at any level, you are nothing more than a tick hanging off a dog's ass.
No, and I don't want to be that ugly about it, because there are people that are working and performing a function. I mean, again, you go to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and they are shuffling the paperwork that has been created to, and I mean, they are also doing things like, making sure that are making sure people at least have some competence behind the wheel before they give them a driver's license. So there are some things that are being done, but again, and I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. The income tax, federal income tax especially, was a temporary measure to fund the war effort, and it was supposed to go away. Now, before the income tax was instituted, we had roads, we had fire departments, we had police departments, we had schools. Everything ran just fine. I was having that conversation with some of my friends that have immigrated to the United States legally, and we were having that conversation, but they both happen to work one of them works in education, and I was explaining to them, they were talking about the cost of higher education, cost of college, and how astronomical it was. And I had to explain to them that just like healthcare and everything else that the federal government has glommed onto and dipped their evil little paws into, the cost of education went through the roof when the federal government assumed control of the federal student loan program, okay, which was supposedly there to make education accessible for everyone. And what it did was it gave the educational institutions the ability to become ridiculously wealthy off of the government teat, just like everything else.
And then perpetuating a cycle of debt in the student.
Exactly. So, I mean, again, this is the whole thing, and it's time for people to wake up and realize that we are the victims. We are wage slaves. We have been placed in eternal servitude by those folks that have been in government for 30 or 40 years. Okay. And they've got it all worked out. I mean, again, this whole thing, some of the stuff that Mike Johnson has done, which is absolutely appalling. Okay. And of course, the rumor is that by the time that you become a senator or even a representative, that they get sufficient dirt on you, which doesn't surprise me at all,
right,
that they can blackmail you when they need you, when they need to. And then again, the other thing, of course, is the fact that you can't run for office unless you've got so many millions of dollars being donated to you.
Well, and truthfully, you, because I've been through this process, you also have to be invited to be able to run for one of the parties.
Right. Exactly.
You can't just throw your hat in the ring and expect to get on the ballot. That's not the way it works.
Well, yeah, they've also convinced everybody, and again, because of the number of people that will just blindly throw a switch for the Democrats, and there's a lot of people that blindly throw a switch for the,
I don't know if they did this nationwide, but in North Carolina, they do not have an option to vote straight party anymore. You can't just click straight Republican or straight Democrat ticket. You actually have to vote. You actually have to read the things. There's not a line item for a straight ticket vote.
Well, one of the most encouraging things I saw, or I have seen, I believe it was Arkansas that I saw it about. They have passed some voter reform where they have, in many states, I think, have done this, where they have said that absentee voting and early voting are not rights. You have the right to participate in the process, but that does not mean that the process has to be amended to suit you or to convenience you. Now, I mean, again, that's a harsh statement. I mean, I
kind of agree with that though, because unless you're serving overseas.
Correct. Then, and that's where the absentee ballot process was created for. But go ahead.
Yeah, but unless you're serving overseas or have some debilitating medical condition, there's an election day for a reason. I mean,
absolutely.
And I can tell you, most employers, if you're going to vote, they are very lenient when it comes to letting people go vote.
Well, they have to be.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying you really can't use that as an excuse.
As an excuse.
Right.
No, absolutely.
I think on election day, if you are not in the military overseas, or you have some bedridden disability, if you don't vote in person, you don't vote.
Well, and that's exactly the way it was intended to be up until the Democrats filed 183 lawsuits in every state, and again, this is the amazing thing. When we filed lawsuits against the election fraud, which I saw an article about that just came out, that they are now admitting that there was massive election fraud 3 years later. They only just now decided to hear the case and all of the evidence in Fulton County. And we were told that we didn't have jurisdiction, but yet they were able to file these. And again, it's the two-tiered justice system. They were able to file and I think that one of them was that. I cannot ever remember his name, but he was running for president in out of Texas back in 2016, and he got culled shortly after Beto O'Rourke did. But
Cruz?
at any rate, not wanting Ted Cruz, it was somebody like that though. But at any rate, he was one of the ones that was filing a lot of the. I want to say one, but I can't remember. But at any rate, he was one of the ones that's filing all these lawsuits in other states to change the election laws in other states. And
Yeah,
that was allowed. But we can't question those laws because that's not allowed. This is the whole thing about the entrenched bureaucracy. You know, the Department of Justice is not. Justice is supposed to be blind and it's supposed to apply equally. You know, I mean, again, it's one of those where,
well,
you know,
me and you both know that it's not blind, because if it was, then that doddering old jackass in the White House would have been indicted and been on trial for the same document issue that Donald Trump's having.
Well, no, and more so.
And Barack Obama and Bill Clinton.
And you saw where Jack Smith admitted that the photos that were used and were staged by the FBI.
I saw that. And so why is the case even still standing at this point? Then is my question.
Because it is election interference by the Department.
Well, I know the judge postponed the trial indefinitely.
Oh, absolutely. But that's because they're trying to, I mean, again, this is the whole thing, their whole goal. So in 2020, they kept Joe Biden off of the election trail and in his basement with the COVID hoax. Okay. That it was just so dangerous for anybody to be outdoors. If you were outside, you were going to die. And then, of course, now they've gone through the whole thing of everybody having to take the jab and yada, yada, yada. But now people, they can't pull that nonsense again because people, there are enough people that
people
have
are fed up with their
it.
bullshit's what it is.
Yeah. So they have to have something to prevent people seeing just how incredibly incompetent that crotchety old bastard is. And the only way
but I don't understand how I don't see how you can hide it. I mean, it's on
they can't.
Clear view every day if you turn on the news. Like, I am not as young as I used to be, right? So I'm not as agile as I used to be. Right. And so I may stumble every once in a while, but you know what? I very rarely have a problem tripping going upstairs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not, and I don't want to beat him up for being old. I really don't want to beat him up for being old.
The man was a bastard when he was young, and he's a bastard now.
He was never competent or intelligent. He lies.
He's a plagiarist.
He lies every time he opens his mouth. He plagiarized to get his degree. He has claimed that he said
he graduated at the top of his law class. Right. And if you pull the numbers, he was like second from last.
Right. And so, he's a liar.
My little Flossie dog has a better comprehension of the Constitution and constitutional law than that bastard.
Oh, I have no doubt. But again, he's also has no intention of paying any attention to the Constitution.
Well, I tell you, I saw something the other day. I'm thinking serious. I've been saying this before as a joke, but I'm thinking serious about writing a heartfelt letter to His Majesty asking him to take us back because we're too fucking stupid to govern ourselves.
Yeah.
But they unveiled a portrait of King Charles. I'm going to tell you one thing. It looks like a menstruated moose had explosive diarrhea on that canvas. Yeah. It looks absolutely hideous. And I'm like, what in the world? You remember the paint in one of the Ghostbusters movies where it had that painting of the bad guy? Yeah. It looks almost exactly like that.
And speaking of Ghostbusters, I watched that Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I thought it was a pretty good movie. I
Yeah, and
really
I'll tell you
enjoyed it.
another, the Frozen, the next one in the series, Frozen.
Yeah, Frozen Empire is pretty good too. Yeah,
Yeah, I
I did like
watched
that.
it yesterday, I believe.
Hmm.
I kind of didn't like after Ghostbusters. After the first one, I really didn't like the second one or a lot of the other ones, and I didn't like the ones that had the chicks in it because it just seemed like it was too busy making fun of the first one.
Yeah, uh, you know, I, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that one. I thought it was. I just didn't think it was well done. You know,
But now I do
it, it
like how, like in the Afterlife one and this newest, the Frozen Nation, how
mhm.
they did the tie-in with Spangler and all that
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
That was really, really kind of well done,
Oh no,
and
I agree.
I did enjoy that too. But I was sitting there thinking when we had the Fire Master, it was like, all you need's a firebender
There you go.
and get us a
Right.
firebender, we're good to go.
But like the firebenders, he was not able to generate his own fire.
Nope. I said there's a company called Webtoon. Have you ever heard of Webtoon?
No, I have not.
All right, Webtoon is like, I guess, the modern equivalent to seeing the comics in the newspaper.
All right.
But they have different ones. Like there's one about the Bat family, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of different series. And I think it gives an opportunity for a lot of budding cartoonists and stuff to put their product out there. But it also gives an avenue for known quantities to continue to touch with base with their fan base.
Okay.
And they have there is an Avatar, the Last Airbender one on there that takes place between the end of the show and the Legend of Korra
Okay.
and stuff. And I've been reading it; it's pretty good. But I just find it really the plethora of stories that can be told and the different perspectives that can be told using characters that people think are so one dimensional.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, no doubt. But I was going to talk about one more movie that I saw
What's that?
recently, which was Dune Part Two, the second part of the Frank Herbert novel about
I
Dune.
have not seen the first one.
Well,
Well, I
have
saw
you
the
read?
original. The
Yeah.
original.
Have you read the book?
Yes, I have read the book.
Okay. So again, the whole problem, and I took my girlfriend through both the first and the second one because she had never read the book. And the problem is that there was so much underlying content in the book
Mm-hmm.
that they never, in either the first one or the second one, they hit some of the points in the first one that the first making of the first Dune that they missed in the second in this recent one, and
Uh-huh.
vice versa. But again, it was one of those things where, especially on the first one, I was having to stop every 5 to 10 minutes and say, "Now, what you need to know is okay."
Well, and so
And
you run in that to a lot, and that's one reason why when it's a movie like that that is based off a book like Dune or Lord of the Rings or
oh yeah,
something
oh
like
yeah,
that, the movie can only be so long.
right, absolutely. I mean, they'd have to turn it into a mini series. I
Right.
mean, again, it was amazing to me that they turned The Hobbit, of course, which was the shortest of the books that
Um,
J.R.R. Tolkien wrote,
that
into a
it should
three.
not have been 3 movies
It should not have been 3 movies.
because
But
that
of course,
part with the pale orc and all that,
yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
it just
It was.
kind of
It wasn't there. It detracted from the story
right.
completely. And of course, again, the big problem that I always had with that series was that dwarves and elves and men were all equal. They just were. It's like the elves were very fast, very light, and very, they were frail. They were very talented, very artistic, but a human being could grab an elf and snap them like a twig. Same thing with a dwarf. Dwarfs were short, stocky, but they were little tiny tanks.
Yeah.
So it was not like they have in all of the movies that came out where the elves are just these super beings. They were, and they had a lot of really strong points, but they also had flaws. And they really, in all of these things, they make the dwarves look, it offends me because they make the dwarves look like they're lesser, and they weren't.
Well,
I mean,
I don't know if it necessarily makes, because see, I don't pick up on that about them making the dwarves look lesser.
well, the only one that they really didn't do that in my opinion, was the Battle of the Five Armies. Okay.
Well, because, and I think one of the things I think you're picking up on is I think in that movie in particular, the dwarves were the comedic relief.
Well, and they were also, yeah,
but they were in the book as well.
True to a degree, but
right.
not in. But I'm talking about more. It's much more evident in the Lord of the Rings, but they were comedic relief. Okay, but it's like the whole thing where Legolas gets into a drinking contest with Gimli.
Mm-hmm.
Gimli would have won that drinking contest. Okay, I'm sorry, but the elves wouldn't have been able to, because they didn't, an elf would, could survive for several days off of a single leaf kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas, dwarves were robust. So,
robust and hale.
Yep, absolutely. And they were, and that was one of the things that kind of, I realize they always take poetic license, but I think that was too much poetic license that they took with that particular thing.
Well, and that's one of the things I think that is a trap. Mm-hmm. Is when you try to make something out of a book, and I don't think you get the same result with like the Harry Potter books and movies because J.K. Rowling's still alive.
Right, exactly.
Where if Tolkien would have been alive, I think the movies and stuff they've made, it would have been a completely different ball game because he would not, if it was something that went wrong, right, he wouldn't have, if it was something that he did not want, he would not. And it's kind of odd though, because usually the Tolkien people, the Tolkien estate are usually pretty astute to stuff like that. And because it's like the Lord of the Rings online video game, they are, I mean, if they pretty much have to follow the lore from the Tolkien people, or risk losing the ability to make the game.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's just, that's kind of a purist thing as well. Now, I have not I've not ever read the Harry Potter books, so I'm not sure how.
Well, I'm going to tell you a little secret. I used to say, and I'm not saying that I believe this now, but I used to say that the Harry Potter books were people that were too stupid to understand the Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
However, I will retract that because I have since read the Harry Potter books a couple times. I find something interesting in the Harry Potter books, and I can't quite put my finger on it. And because, I write some myself, and one thing that I find that is something, either J.K. Rowling is one of the greatest writers that's ever lived, or she's not the only one that's writing these books. Okay. Because in the middle of the book, depending on the thing, the manner, when you write a story, and you, like with Tolkien, it's very apparent that the voice Tolkien. That he's using, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No matter what perspective from the story, you know that it's Tolkien that's writing it.
Yes.
Because he has a certain manner.
Right, with all the greats like Dostoevsky. If you've ever read anything by Dostoevsky, it is brutally apparent that it is right. Dostoevsky that's writing it.
Well, go ahead. Well, in the Harry Potter books, there is a shift of tone and voice. And sometimes it's almost seems like a different person is writing and telling the story instead of J.K. Rowling. And I don't know whether J.K. Rowling is a conglomeration of a bunch of different authors that got together, maybe using her stories and putting it together. But because I've read another book she's got out called Casual Vacancy, and the voice is yet again completely different than what you find in the Harry Potter series. And I'm not saying the Harry Potter series is bad. I do have gotten to the point to where I am not quite as a Tolkien snob as I was before.
Well, and the only major problem that I have with the Harry Potter, and I've not read them. I have not read the books, but it's like there doesn't seem to be any cost to performing the magic. It's just like you just have, some people just have more magic than others, and that kind of, I know too much about physics and the physical laws of the universe to there should be a cost. There should be, anytime when you perform great, powerful magic, it should have a cost, in my opinion.
Right.
Because just like if you decide to go out and erect a pup tent, that doesn't take much effort. If you decide to build a house yourself, that takes a hot minute and a lot of effort. Right. Now back to great writers again. That whole thing again. That one of the things that makes Dune and the trilogy Dune Messiah, or excuse me, Dune Children of Dune and Dune Messiah, I believe is the such a iconic work, very similar to Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, is the intrigue and the backstories and they're all very applicable. For example, in Dune, the spice is akin to the oil that we use in a modern industrial society, right. The petroleum products. It's the most important thing in the world. Okay, just like spice is the most important commodity in the universe. And of course, the spice comes from a desert planet, like the majority of the petroleum products that we consume currently are coming from a desert environment and things of that nature. So there's a lot of interplay going on, and that interplay can, the political intrigue from the church, and the church trying to control all of the governments from behind the scenes, and the various houses fighting with one another and all of that stuff. And that kind of, the science fiction portion of it, which, while extremely good, is and entertaining, is just, it's more window dressing to cover up a story of subterfuge and political intrigue and everything like that. Very similar to, again, Lord of the Rings was similar to that. And I think that runs true in Harry Potter as well. But again, the point, that one of the points I was going to make is in the conversation I was having with my girlfriend, we really should have a name other than boyfriend and girlfriend for people that are like over 50, or we should, let's even take it over 40, because it just sounds weird. But at any rate, the whole point is that when we watched the movie, she, at the end of the first movie, she said, I want to thank you, because if you had not told me all of this that was going on, I would have turned the movie off in 10 minutes. Okay, because she's not a fan of science fiction, and she. Well,
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't see how you make that into a movie. It's kind of like Stephen King's The Stand. I don't see how you make that into a movie. I got an interesting question for you.
Sure.
Today, out of all of the authors that you know of, what are your top 4?
Oh, that's tough. Arthur C. Clarke has to be up there. Isaac Asimov. But they're for different reasons. Right. Frank Herbert, of course, has got to be up there. Tolkien has got to be up there. I can't stop at 4.
Well, I mean, I get that, and I'm the same way. But Right now, like if I'm just spitballing off the top of my head, the 4 that I would put would probably be Tolkien, Salinger, Twain, and Agatha Christie.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, yeah, exactly. And but it depends on
What mood I'm
on
in.
what mood I'm in.
Right. It
Again,
depends
because
on what journey I want to take
right,
that night.
I thoroughly enjoyed and would read again the Lucky Star series, and they're juvenile. Okay, Starship Troopers, Robert Heinlein, I, Robot. I mean,
Or
again,
the Redwall series by Brian Jacques.
right,
That's a great series.
and you know, again, it's oh my goodness, excuse me. My apologies. I just had something, caught something out of the corner of my eye, and I had a spider descending from my and them
And
things
there
are
is our woolly booger for the night, ladies and gentlemen.
it yeah, he was just slowly descending down, and now but I mean, again, that's one of those things that it's just a primordial fear from when you see one of those bad boys. I shall dispatch him here shortly. I don't
Well,
want
see,
to do it on without
I wouldn't kill
being
him.
on
I
mute.
would take him and put him outside.
Well, they're all over the place, but
I know.
mean,
I still try not to kill
me.
anything unless it's a snake. It's like the bees that I was telling you about that took up
Oh yeah.
residence in my front porch. I've decided as long as they're doing their bee thing and not bothering me, I'm not going to bother them.
Well, and if you leave them alone long enough, at some point, and if things go really hard sideways, you can tear that porch up, and you will have a pretty significant stockpile of honey in there.
Well, and I told you, I got to thinking though, I don't really know because I used to work. I didn't used to be at home during the day. Mm-hmm. I really don't know how long they've been in there. That was when I noticed it. So they may have been in there for a long time.
You might have a substantial. Now, the problem with that is it will draw vermin because that, honey is one of the most perfect and best foodstuffs on the planet. I mean, it's great. If you don't pasteurize it, which kills the pollen grains and actually makes it where it'll spoil.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, the Romans, when they needed to transport the body of like a commander or something that had fallen in battle back to Rome, they would pack their body in honey and ship them back. I mean, and we're talking from the hot desert.
Don't tell that chick what's been testifying in New York. She might lick them all over.
Well, there you go. But but again, they take them and ship them back to Rome, and then scrape the honey off and sell the honey.
Yeah, I don't want honey that people that have been wrapped up.
Yeah, no, I think I'd probably. Of course,
they may not have to disclose that.
There's a lot of stuff they didn't disclose, I'm sure, back in the Roman days. But again, the point is that it didn't kill people, and there'd been a dead body, and the body wouldn't decay while it was in the honey. And honey is
it probably kept it airtight too.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's amazing stuff, but it is also really popular amongst everything that walks, crawls, and flies on this earth, as far as I'm aware of. And if they get a chance to get their hands on it, they will. So it will draw vermin if you've got a substantial hive under there, and that could be a problem. So you might wind up with a mouse problem. But you got Flossie dogs. She might decide to become a huntress and wipe out some of the vermin.
Well, the vermin, the mice and stuff, we have natural predators, and I have like 6 hawks that live here and 3 owls. So I don't see a lot of mice, and I don't see a lot of rabbits anymore.
I would suspect that is, and of course that was the whole problem when I had my garden going. I had that rabbit that was eating my garden as fast as I could grow something that I named Hassenpfeffer. And then the neighborhood Hulk, because I explained to him when I caught him eating my stuff that he was, if things got bad, he was going to be the first thing on my plate. And then that dadgum neighborhood Hulk decided he had fattened up enough and took him out.
Funny how that works.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to say this, but my triple goat pecker coffee cup's empty.
Oh, my friend, I'm so
And
sorry.
it's time to call it a day.
All right, sir.
And that is the snout to the curly tail and everything in between. And whether you like it or not and you got pissed off, we don't care because we know.
Yeah, but good.
All right, you crazy bunch of motherfuckers. Wait, can we say mother? Anyway, you've been listening to the Carolina Underground. It isn't politically correct, it's just correct. Our motto is, if you can't go balls deep, don't go at all. Actually, that's not our motto, and I'm sorry, I don't even know what that meant. All right, we gotta go. We hope you enjoyed the show. And if you didn't, we hope it really pissed you off. Follow us on Twitter at Carolina UNDGRND Underground, get it? Or drop us an email at Carolina UNDGRND, get it? At northstate.net. We want to hear from you. Y'all be cool. See you next time on Carolina Underground.